Pats fans, the time for the talk has just about ended. The 2022 NFL Draft is just over 24 hours away. Which way are the Patriots going to go in the first round? Will Nikhil Harry be moved? And are the Patriots possibly targeting a quarterback in later rounds? Yeah, don't adjust your sound, folks. I just said it. We're going to discuss it today. I'm Mike Debate, and you're about to be locked in to the Locked On Patriots podcast.
You are Locked On Patriots, your daily New England Patriots podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all of you Foxborough faithful, and thank you once again for making Locked On Patriots a daily part of your New England Patriots coverage, but most of all, for making Locked On Patriots your first listen every day. Remember, Locked On Patriots is free and available on all platforms, and of course, today's episode of Locked On Patriots brought to you by the good folks over at Blue Nile. This Mother's Day, give mom something she'll treasure forever with fine jewelry from BlueNile.com. And Locked On Patriots listeners get $50 off a $500 purchase. Use the promo code Locked On at checkout. Pats fans, thank you once again. It is Wednesday. It is the midway point in the week. Virtue lies in the middle. And who else would we welcome today on this virtuous Wednesday than my esteemed co-host? Before we get to the laundry list of her nicknames, all of them well-deserved, by the way, I am your host, Mike Debate. I cover your New England Patriots for Pat's Country of Sports Illustrated. I am also your host of Locked On Patriots, which, of course, is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Smash the subscribe button on YouTube, folks. Follow, download, subscribe to Locked On Patriots on all platforms. Once again, free and available on all platforms. But Wednesdays here on Locked On Patriots belong to the resident lady of Locked On. And I am always honored, always privileged to have her join me on the microphone each and every Wednesday. Columnist extraordinaire for patspropaganda.com. Want to give her a special shout out in addition to what I usually give her each and every week here on the show. The draft work that she has done for Pat's Prop and some of the draft prep articles that Claire has put out, top notch. Please, folks, go ahead, check them out. It will definitely inform you and keep you up to date on all the latest that you need for the draft. She is also a podcast host extraordinaire of A Clare Perspective, a Patriots podcast. One of my favorite listens in any realm of media, but definitely if you're a Patriots fan, you want to check this out. Claire's insight, second to none, top-notch guests, some of the best in the business. And why wouldn't they visit the Countess of Clare herself? They should, and they do. She is the Empress of Tight-Ended. She is the Queen of TE. She is the Baroness of Blockers. She is my good friend and colleague, ClazzyClare Cooper. Claire, thanks for joining me from across the pond today. Happy draft week.
Oh, yeah, happy draft week. Not very long now, thank goodness. Let's just get this draft rolling, shall we, really?
Absolutely. Anybody I've already been told it several times this week that I'm looking a little sleep deprived. And yeah, there is no secret to that, folks. It is not an exact science to predict the draft. The minute you mention a player's name that a fan doesn't like, you are the devil incarnate. The minute you mention someone that they love, you are deified as a god. The draft week is always the best time of year. I don't care. I take the good with the bad, the criticism with the positivity, because at the end of the day, it's about what Bill Belichick is going to do. It's not about what Mike Debate wants them to do, not about what any of my other colleagues in the Boston media want them to do. Not even about what the Countess wants them to do, although I think Bill's listening to the Countess. I really do believe he's got a pipeline in to the West Midlands, and I think he's really keeping a sharp eye on you, my friend. No, all kidding aside, it really is, I think, a great opportunity, for all of us to play armchair GM. And look, we do it just along with fans, themselves. Any journalist that tells you, oh, I'm not a fan, is lying to you. Maybe they're not a fan of the team they cover, but they're a football fan. They wouldn't be in this business unless you're not. And the draft is really, I think, a great time to be a fan. It just truly is. And I love it. It is one of my favorite times of the year. Claire, we're going to talk about the Patriots' strategy for the draft, whether or not they might be in the market for a position that's getting virtually no coverage throughout this draft cycle. And there's a reason for that. They addressed it very well last year, but could the Patriots throw their hat into the ring? It's a possibility. We haven't discussed it much yet, but we're going to here today, folks. We're also going to talk about the number 21 pick and how the New England Patriots may look to utilize that. Are they locked into that 21st pick? See what I did there, folks? They might. They might be, but if they are, which direction are they going to go into? But we're going to start with, you know what, Claire, we're going to dive right in. I'm in the mood to take on the haters today, and we're going to dive right into this. Nikhil Harry, just the name, just mentioning the name Nikhil Harry sends shivers up the spine of about 95% of the Patriots fan base. I think with the exception of me, you, Murph, and Matt Chatham, and Steve Balistrieri, I think we're the only ones that still have any faith left in Nikhil. Mine is waning. I'll be very honest with you. I'm starting to waver as well. Nikhil, obviously, not in Foxborough for the start of organized training workouts last week. The off-season workout program, I shouldn't say that. OTAs don't start for another couple of weeks, but the off-season workout program kicked off. Nikhil, nowhere to be found. Was not at the throwing sessions that were hosted by Mack Jones down in Tampa. It's looking obvious that these two sides are just looking for, they're heading for a parting of the ways. And I can't really argue against it anymore. I think it's going to be the best for Nikhil. I think it's going to be the best for the Patriots. But the fact of the matter is that they have a finite amount of time where they're going to actually be able to move him. Draft weekend is a weekend that crazy things can happen and things come together. Trades are discussed. General managers and team executives are shuffling all around, all over the place. This year it's in Vegas. Things could get really crazy. I'm personally and professionally. I guess
what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Well, who knows now with camera phones and social media? We never know what's going to stay and what's going to go. But in any case. I'm staying here, so I don't have to worry about that side of it.
It's good.
But
you stay out of trouble.
I'm trying to stay respectable, but I do it for you, Countess. But when it comes to Nikhil, obviously there is going to be a parting of the ways. I would say 95% yes, 5% no at this point. Do you think that there is a chance, and how good of a chance, if so, that Nikhil Harry is moved this weekend during the draft?
Well, as I've mentioned on this show before, and you alluded to, I'm not a huge Nikhil Harry fan, but I haven't necessarily slated him particularly either. I mean, yeah, sometimes I've been frustrated by his lack of production and such like that, but I've tried to give him, as you mentioned, the benefits of the doubts. I feel that the weight of a first-round pick can be heavy on a player's shoulders, and I think that has also been a big issue for the fan base. If Harry had have been taken in maybe like the second round of the draft, I'm wondering if we wouldn't really be having anywhere near as much negativity in regards to when saying his name. And that is kind of unfortunate, really. I mean, what else is unfortunate is the media hype up. And that's that his agent caused, giving it the kind of the big trade request talks last year, and the Patriots reporting nothing of the sort. It just didn't really sit well with fans because, I mean, it's a bit of the look, if you don't want to be on our team, then maybe you should just leave. It's kind of one of those, it kind of was even more solidified when he wasn't performing to the standard as expected at all. So it kind of sticks in a fan's craw when you weren't really giving us what we expected you to. And then you're kind of being a little bit slightly disrespectful at the same time, because as a fan, obviously, like, you're a fanatic about the team. You've got this love, you've got this emotion for the team. And although I know that not every player will sort of have that kind of love for his own team and that sort of thing, at the end of the day, when you've got a player that's kind of very openly like, I kind of want to leave, it doesn't feel nice as a fan. You kind of, well, you don't want guys that aren't really happy to be here. You want to see that positivity, and I think that's a lot of sort of the pull towards Kendrick Bourne. He's just such a happy-go-lucky guy who just seems so happy to be a Patriot. It's like you want to cheer for those guys because they want to be here, and then when you've got an individual that just doesn't really seem like he wants to be here, it's then difficult to sort of, well, why do we want, if you don't want to be here, why do we want you here, really? And it was compounded by the fact that he wasn't really performing the way that we expected him to. Now, all of this isn't to say that Harry isn't a good receiver. I'm sure he could be, but he isn't a decent Patriots receiver. And whoever maybe to kind of blame for that, if you like, his agent, his coaches, the system, himself, it just isn't. It just doesn't really seem that it's been a fit over these last few years as a Patriot. So whichever box you kind of want to tick on the exit interview, I mean, that's fine. But I think maybe, as you said, it's time to move along from Nikhil Harry. And I think it's all about getting the most value that you can for him whilst you do. Now, obviously, for over the weekend, that if that value may be in the form of draft picks, that is something that we can only really know by also what the other side are willing to pay. So there's reports that there's positive dialogue in regards to Harry and a trade. And I think you even wrote about this recently for Sports Illustrated. I mean, ultimately, I think it's a good idea for the Patriots to trade Harry. And to be honest, right now, draft picks is probably what is of the most value. Sure, Bill has already made some moves and some people don't like it, already trading back from the 5th to get a 6th and a 7th. But, coach knows that there are plenty of holes to fill. I mean, heck, we keep banging on about it, so maybe he is listening just slightly. But if he's going to do that kind of package, I don't know, the whole Izzo thing, I mean, we're not discussing it, but me and coach not on the same wavelength after the whole Izzo thing. So, I'm not really sure that he's listening. The lines of communication really
Stay tuned, folks, for the Ryan Izzo anthology coming soon on Locked On Patriots here each and every Wednesday. I'm sorry, I had to. I couldn't help it.
So the lines of communication between me and coach, they're not so great. So I'm not really sure if he is listening, but everybody kind of keeps banging on about the whole plenty of holes to fill anyway. So he's probably listening to somebody. So if he's going to do that package up of lots of picks and get 3 first-round guys that I mentioned last week, this might be the way of going, throwing in Nikhil Harry in there as well. Plenty of picks, a Nikhil Harry, move up into the first round. Crazy things have happened. You never know. But I suppose, bottom line, in all seriousness, my personal opinion is kind of, it's time to sort of release Harry into the world. Kind of, it's not really best as he's a Patriot. So, and it's all about getting the most that you can for him. And I don't think it would be shocking to anyone in Patriots Nation if we did see him move on from the Patriots this year in one way or another. And if this weekend is kind of the pinnacle time when you're going to get the best value for money, if you like, for want of a better phrase, then I think the weekend is, if it's going to be kind of a picks and a trade, a package of picks and a player, in a trade, then to me, it's all about getting the most value for him. And if that's this weekend, then it's the optimal time for him to be kind of utilized in that respect.
Good point. Very good point. And I know I had a little fun at your expense on the Izzo stuff, but
you do.
But you do. I try. We keep the mood light here, Countess. We try to do that. But no, all kidding aside, really, I think the point that you've made about Harry and the fact that it is really, I think, the perfect time to move on for both the Patriots and Nikhil himself is really, I think, the essence of the argument here. Now, whether or not this comes together at the draft or slightly after, this could be, up for debate at this point. I think there is a chance he does get moved this weekend, and I'm not so sure it's going to be a part of a major package to move up. We're hearing that a lot of teams would rather trade back and trade out of the first round. It kind of brings up an interesting scenario, and Ryan Spagnuolo, Pat's Pulpit, joined me yesterday here on the pod, and we talked about this scenario. Does it make it likely now that the Patriots, if they do see other teams trying to move back, that they give a call and say, hey, you know what? We're going to move up. We really have targeted someone that we like.
That last week.
Absolutely. And if they do that, then I think that there is a chance. And you did bring this up last week, and I'm glad that you did. And I'm glad that you reiterated it.
In a crazy way, but crazy
things have
happened.
And it is definitely a possibility. I will say this. I will give you all the credit in the world. I think there will be a parade held in your honor if you were the one to correctly predict that the Patriots somehow took Nikhil Harry and a package of picks and were able to improve the Patriots' first-round draft status as a result of that. If Patriots fans feel that Nikhil brought back an additional first-rounder or increased their ability to get the first-round player that they want, people are going to absolutely love this. But it's clear that the two sides are moving on. New England seems very set in their receiving core. I don't know why Nikhil was not down in Tampa. It didn't look like a situation where he was called out or saying, Nikhil, wish you were down here, buddy. We're doing this, but we'll see you next week. There was none of that. So it looked like these two sides have made the decision to move on. Nikhil is already posting on social media that he's outside interest, but he is keeping himself in top physical condition. You wish both sides well, and who knows, maybe Nikhil Harry does have a bright future elsewhere. It just for any reason just did not work out here in New England. And it is a blemish on Bill Belichick's draft record. But one of the great points on Bill Belichick's draft record, excuse me, folks, was last year at number 15. New England getting their potential quarterback of the future. I think they've done it, but some still a little skeptical, but I think he's going to put those questions to rest this year, and that is Mack Jones. Could the Patriots dip into the quarterback well for the second time in as many years? Well, there's not really a need for it, and it's not a very deep quarterback draft. But Claire and I will discuss that point in just a moment. The wisdom and counsel from the Countess of Claz on this subject when this Wednesday episode of the Locked On Patriots podcast continues. But as you can see on Wednesdays, we always add a little sparkle. We always add a little class to the show. We actually add a lot of class to the show, folks, whenever Claire is here. And it's always my honor to join her on the microphone. But one thing that you can always count on is adding a little class, a little sparkle to that special someone in your life when you provide them with a gift from BlueNile.com. At BlueNile.com, you can celebrate all of life's special moments, all at prices you won't find at a traditional jeweler. Whether she prefers a statement piece or an everyday piece of subtle elegance, BlueNile.com has fine jewelry options for every lady in your life, including your mom, with Mother's Day close and fast approaching. Shop high-quality classic diamond earrings, elegant tennis bracelets, or gemstone pearl necklaces. At BlueNile.com, you can easily navigate thousands of fine jewelry options at every price point. This Mother's Day, give mom something she'll treasure forever with fine jewelry from BlueNile.com. And Locked On Patriots listeners get $50 off a $500 purchase. This podcast exclusive is only good through Mother's Day. So use the promo code Locked On. That's code Locked On, LOCKEDON. Plus, every order is insured, it ships free, and it arrives in discreet packaging that won't give away what's inside. Shop stress-free and find your forever piece. Go to BlueNile.com today. Patriots fans, the esteemed Empress of Tight Endage, the Countess of Claz herself. We're a little tight on time, so I'm not going to go through the whole list, but you can find that volumes 1 through 7 on Locked On Patriots Twitter feed. See, it never ceases to not make her laugh, folks. The esteemed ClazzyClare Cooper is joining me today, as she always does here on Wednesdays. You can tell we're having lots of fun already. We always do when she joins me on the microphone. Claire, in the previous segment, we talked a little bit about Nikhil Harry and the fact that he has probably played his final down in New England. That collective cheer that you can hear, I'm sure you can hear it in West Midlands, is the New England fan base listening to that and cheering that on. But all kidding aside, that's 3 all kidding asides, folks, for those of you scoring at home. The New England Patriots are heading into this draft with different draft needs than they had last year, without question. Last year, it was quarterback, really. I think everyone was expecting the Patriots to address the quarterback position. There was some question as to whether or not they might address it in the first round, but I think everybody agreed this team was ready to select a quarterback. And they did. They selected, I think, the best quarterback in this draft class, and that is Mack Jones. Maybe a little bit of a steal at number 15. Who knows? But I think Mack is the right guy for this system, and I think he's doing a fine job. Team decided to re-sign Brian Hoyer in the offseason. Really, Brian becomes the de facto quarterbacks coach, I think, if we're really being honest. But still a decent backup. I know some people are going to throw a lot of vitriol in his direction, but this is a guy that can still play the position. I don't think the Patriots would have just signed him up for no reason. Jarrett Stidham remains the primary backup. I think Jarrett is someone that can come into his own and can be a decent quarterback in this league. But the Patriots have not been talked about as a team that could possibly be in the market for a quarterback, really for the reasons that I just said. I don't think there's anybody that is looking at the Patriots right now and saying, oh, this team needs a quarterback. But there are interesting options available. I know it's not a quarterback-rich draft, but there are still some options that they could pursue. Just because they could pursue them doesn't necessarily mean that they will pursue them, Claire. In your expert opinion, what would you think No, don't laugh when I say that. I meant that when I said that. In your opinion, what would you think of the Patriots possibly targeting the quarterback? And do you think they might?
Well, I gotta say, Mike, a backup quarterback in this draft for me, I'm sorry, I have to say no. I fully appreciate others feel differently, and that's
Mm-hmm.
fine and dandy. Chidder's Manchester, pointing at you here. But for a start, it isn't, as you mentioned, as many people have mentioned, it isn't a strong quarterback class. Saying that, it could mean that the QBs fall into the later rounds, and coach has got plenty of picks in this, but the Patriots have such significant need in so many of the areas that I would like to see all of them addressed in this draft if picks so allow it. Where the Patriots kind of would or even should consider picking up a quarterback, would they possibly get anyone that could be any better than Jared Stidham? Now, I know that he's not an epically great quarterback. Of course, we know this. That's why he's a backup now. But we don't know if there's any epically great quarterbacks in this draft either, particularly ones where the Patriots might look at in the later rounds. We all know that they've got higher significant need. So to use kind of a more higher round pick, an earlier round pick, utilize that for a quarterback would just seem crazy. I mean, Stidham at least knows the playbook. He knows the system. He knows the team, and he knows Mack Jones. I think bringing in a drafted rookie quarterback this year, to me personally, a Clare perspective, my opinion, it just feels like it's a waste of time. I'm obviously sorry if anybody disagrees. I'm simply stating my own opinion. This is just my own perspective of the matter, and you're entitled to yours completely. It's just with all the holes, with all the needs this year, setting up a future around Mack Jones, a quarterback just seems such a waste of a pick. Now, if they had an undrafted guy come in, for some workouts or whatever, okay. But genuinely, I still feel that the time spent on that is pointless. Stidham has a year left on his contract. And okay, so after this year, it might not be worth keeping him around as he may begin to become costly for just a backup, that sort of thing. But he has several years in the Patriot system, as I mentioned. And I just think that in itself is way more positive than any of these kind of particularly later round draft picks of quarterbacks this year. So sorry, it has to be. Unfortunately for this year, no offense to any of the quarterbacks, I'm sure you're great, that kind of thing. It's a hard no.
Hard no. See, there you go, folks. Claire hits it head on. She's not gonna mince words here. I happen to agree with you. I don't think the Patriots are going to spend a draft pick on a quarterback. Now, that being said, I don't think it's impossible. I agree with you in your opinion, and I think your opinion is absolutely valid. But I don't think it's impossible. If there is someone that they're going to target, it probably would be in the later rounds. And it's interesting now that the Patriots have picked up a 7th rounder. They didn't have one prior to the trade that they made with the Houston Texans, sending number 170 to Houston, getting back number 183, and also getting back number 245, which is the 7th rounder we're talking about. Late round gems can always be a possibility. We've heard about Slade Bolden. I think that is definitely a possibility now in the 7th round. I know a lot of fans are really liking him and the close relationship he has with Mack. Could that be something that the Patriots could utilize? We've talked about Matt Ariza, the punter out of San Diego State. I think he's going to go earlier than the 7th. I think there is a lot of hype around him. I think the Patriots would have to pony up, maybe use a 6th rounder on him. 5th, I don't know. I mean, it might be a little early at 158, but if he's got a lot of draft, capital surrounding him and a lot of buzz, the Patriots may have no choice if they want to secure his services. One guy that really kind of raises my eyebrow a little bit, and I'm not so sure that he's a fit for the New England Patriots, but E.J. Perry, quarterback out of Brown University, right in my neck of the woods. Brown University is literally a stone's throw from where I live in Providence, and Ivy League school. It's a situation where he comes in with a little bit of pedigree. His coach, James Perry, who coached at Bryant University in Smithfield, which is another stone's throw from where I live, was actually a Brown quarterback in his earlier years. It's actually EJ's uncle, believe it or not. James is someone that's very well versed in up-tempo, quarterback styles that allow quarterbacks to use dual threat. And I know that's not the system that the New England Patriots run, but if you're looking for someone that can switch things up a little bit, maybe give you an additional RPO threat, which, by the way, folks, for everyone that says that Mack Jones can't run the RPO, I encourage you to go back, take a look at some of the footage from him when he quarterbacked Alabama. I assure you, folks, he can do it. He might not be the quickest guy in the world, but he's savvy enough to be able to do it. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I'll get back to Perry now. Perry completed 66.5% of his passes last year, threw for over 3,000 yards, 23 touchdowns, combined to 14 picks. But he also ran for 402 yards and 7 rushing touchdowns. First team All Ivy League honors, Offensive Player of the Year award in the conference. To me, I think this kid represents something of an interesting prospect. Best way for me to put it, at the quarterback position. Patriots are well stocked, but if he ends up in that latter part and the Patriots are struggling to fill that 7th round slot, don't be a bit surprised to hear E.J. Perry's name. They had him in for a visit. There is close ties between the organization and the region, obviously in New England. I would love to see a guy who went to college in Rhode Island quarterbacking for the New England Patriots, even if it isn't a backup role or a practice squad role. But that upside could be intriguing. I'm not saying the Patriots do it, folks. Don't misconstrue here, but he could be a name to watch because there is some light on him. And he had a very good showing in the East-West Shrine Bowl game earlier this year. So that may help to make him a pick this weekend rather than go the undrafted free agent route. So just something to keep an eye on, folks. You never know what the Pats are going to do. And Claire, we never know what the Pats are going to do. But the one thing that we do know is as we sit here right now, your New England Patriots hold the rights to the 21st pick in the first round of the 2022 NFL Draft. A lot of speculation on trading up, trading down, but if the Patriots are locked into that position, what are they going to do with that pick? Are they going to go offense or are they going to go defense? Folks, Claire has looked into her Belichickian crystal ball, and she's going to share her thoughts on the subject in just a moment. But first, folks, in order to get ready for the NFL Draft, you have to have all of your notes set. You have to have all of your research done, and you have to be in tip-top physical condition. You've got to be able to stay up around the clock and absorb all of the analysis and watch your team build its roster for the 2022 season. Best way to do that is to increase your protein with a delicious treat that is not only delicious, but also good for you. And that is thanks to our good friends over at Built Bar and Built.com. Folks, I always say that BuiltBar.com provides some of the most delicious but nutritious treats that you'll find anywhere in just anywhere. I mean, there really is no better way to say it. These guys start with making a delicious treat that is better than a candy bar, but they also make it good for you. And they do it in a way that is mysterious to me. It's mysterious to Claire, but we still marvel at their ability to do so. And some of the great flavors that they offer are just tremendous, whether it be peanut butter brownie, whether it be coconut almond, whether it be raspberry, orange, salted caramel, you can never go wrong. There is a line of Built granola bars that are now fresh on the site, so definitely be sure to go and check those out. Some of the great flavors there, obviously chocolate coconut, chocolate peanut butter. Definitely try these out. Don't delay, folks. Do it today. Visit Built.com and enter the promo code LOCK15 for 15% off your next order. Again, for that delicious treat that has more protein, less sugar, but more taste than any candy bar you'll have, definitely go and check out the great folks over at Built Bar. Visit Built.com, enter the promo code LOCK15 for 15% off your next order at Built.com. Patriots fans, it is almost time to wrap things up here on Wednesday, the resident lady of Locked On's day here on Locked On Patriots, always adding some class and pizzazz to the show. We always love having Claire on, Claire Cooper of Pats Propaganda and of A Claire Perspective, a Patriots podcast. My good friend, my esteemed colleague, and my de facto co-host here every day, every Wednesday. And Claire, we've had a blast so far. We've talked Nikhil Harry. We've talked quarterbacks. I think we've upset the fan base enough right now. I think we'll go into a subject that may make them a little bit more palatable, and that is the Patriots' plans for the number 21 pick coming up on Thursday night. No guarantee that the Patriots are going to hold on to this, but the more we're hearing, it looks like they're I don't want to say they're kind of resigning themselves to be, picking it at this selection, but at the same time, it's looking likely like 21 will be where they're going to make their first pick. We've talked about it all week long. We've speculated. Do they go offense? Do they go defense? Who are the prospects? What are the needs? Where do they need to target? What position do they need to get at? Claire, in your wisdom and counsel, doing the draft, research that you've done, and you've done a great job with these pieces out on Pat's Propaganda, folks. Some of the best draft coverage you'll read. I highly encourage you to go check it out. You're Bill Belichick. You're the New England Patriots. You're on the clock, number 21. You have to hand that card over to Roger Goodell. Whose name? I shouldn't say whose name, but which direction are you going in? Is it an offensive player or is it a defensive player?
What's that crumpled up Post-it note going to say when it opens up?
It's going to say Vontae Mack no matter what.
Little draft day reference there. Well, Mike, you said we have the $1 million question here, don't we? And the answer is as much of Patriots Nation undivided. And it's twofold as well. The Pats have such a list of significant needs. And also the draft has some quality depth, at several positions. I think not to be a cop-out, but it's all just going to depend on who is there. The top, or maybe the most popular, I think, in Patriots Nation is kind of cornerback wide receiver. With a lot of people knowing that they need an offensive lineman, but just loathing the fact that whilst all the other teams are going to get all these hot, flashy new weapons, that the Patriots scoop up a lineman. Some folks just don't think it's sexy. I have to disagree. I kind of like me some O-line, to be honest, and I am in perpetual turmoil with what position I want filling at that 21st spot, cornerback or tackle. So yeah, offense or defense or offense, I suppose you should say. And it all depends upon which day of the week you ask me as well. But I mean, right now, I still seriously don't know because I want a cornerback. I do. But I want one of those fantabulous, shiny, new offensive linemen as well. One of those top, really super duper ones. So I'm starting to get more and more on board with my crazy idea and putting in from last week that coach should just pull the later round picks, especially now he's moved and got even more. He needs to pull them and move up to get a couple of top guys in the first round. Then I don't have to choose between the cornerback and the lovely offensive lineman.
See?
Now, it's a cop-out. I know, it's a cop-out. Because I know what you're going to say. And I'm very known to be indecisive. I think kind of most people know me as that now. And I guess I just hope that the Patriots select a really talented guy at 21. And I know it's a bit old and cliche, and so many teams kind of have made picks that have been a bust. But as we mentioned, the whole Nikhil Harry thing, it's left that kind of smudge, that mark, that bad taste in the mouths of Patriots fans. It's not great to have so much negativity, but I see why people are unhappy. First round picks can be expensive and you don't want to waste them. And it genuinely feels like that first round pick from that year has been wasted, which is why, as we aforementioned earlier in the show, it would be good if he could be utilized to gain something within this draft. Okay, maybe it's not going to be a first round pick. Maybe it helps get another first round pick, that kind of thing. So, maybe have the value of him in that regard. But I know that fans will be unhappy if the selection is made and it's kind of not the top corner or top wide receiver. And because I think what's been assessed as the most expensive, in all fairness, and taking a tackle to replace Shaq Mason could be something that sits really ickily for fans because it's the whole coach made a hole when maybe there wasn't a hole, and now he's had to waste the kind of first round pick on a guard or a tackle, that kind of thing. And even me, who has the big love for the offensive guys, as I said, I can see how that can sting, particularly because, as I said, he's sort of made the situation that he didn't need to make. And I don't deny it. There's always a fact that the O-line is significant, and a talented wide receiver isn't the one thing that will make a team. It isn't the only thing that will make a team. I get how it can help make a team, but it isn't that one thing. So getting that one top wide receiver isn't going to make the whole team fantastic. Right. I think overall, I kind of hope the selection, I hope it's kind of for cornerback, because I think it's a position of need and it's a place in the draft where there's some serious talent at the top. And I know that it'll make a lot of Patriots Nation happy. And I like my fellow Patriots Nation fans happy. I like everybody to be happy. It's all good fun when we're kind of happy, and it doesn't have to be really negative. Let's all be lovely kind of thing. But I mean, I never claim to know what the Patriots will do. I don't claim to know anything, in all fairness. Particularly most days, I claim to know nothing. But let's say I hope that they take a cornerback. However, if all the really kind of good top cornerbacks have all flown off the board, and the kind of like, you've got like the Trevor Pennings of the draft sitting there at 21. I'm sorry, but I've got to say, you've got to pick up one of those really good offensive linemen. And I know everybody, as I said, doesn't think it's sexy. But if the top cornerbacks have gone, I think that's, in regards to position of need, I think they're both kind of very equal. They feel very equal to me. They're both sort of up there. But I appreciate the kind of the talent aspect of a cornerback is ranking sort of higher. So that's what I'm saying. Really, I think 21, you've got to go defense. Cornerback, that's the pick. However, there is a plan B. There is a on the sideline. If all the top ones have gone because they've just flown off the board and they're sitting there at 21 and you haven't got those top guys, you then sort of looking in maybe the third round for the kind of Kobe Bryant type guys who still look really good as a cornerback, but he isn't up there with the elites, as they like to say. So if you're kind of looking at him, then great, let's grab him in the third round and let's utilize number 21 for that really big, really epic, really great offensive line guy, like your Trevor Penning, like the pronounce his surname,
Bernard Ryman. Yep.
Bernard Ryman, that's better. Who used to be, he played tight end, so he ticks lots of boxes for me when it comes to offensive.
I know she'd like that.
Oh yeah, I always like me a bit of tight endage, as we all know.
No, there's a lot of reasons to like Bernard Ryman. Very, very good, very versatile.
More than one, of course.
Prospect, absolutely. But I know, that one's got the highlighter, circle.
He's got a little extra brownie point. There's a little extra column
exactly.
And when tight end tick, then you
little
kind
star
of
by his name.
Little star by his name moves up.
I got it.
If you've got one of those guys sitting there at 21, and as I said, all the top cornerbacks have kind of flown off the board, I think you rejuggle and you kind of put offensive line as that 21 pick, and then you move your cornerback thing down to pick up one of those kind of second level guys or whatever you'd want to call it. So it really depends on what's happened to the board. Obviously, because it depends on that anyway, regardless. But I think if you're asking me to make a decision of picking defense and offense, it only pushes out by a little bit, but I'm going cornerback. So I'm going that defensive position is more significant of need. However, I can't say that that's what they should definitely take at 21 because it depends on what is there on the board. It's all about player, it's not about position. And I know that's really cliche and a lot of people will groan, but that's kind of how it is. You want the best player at that pick. So my opinion, it should be the defensive guy. It should be that cornerback guy. But if those top ones aren't there, then you should prioritize the offensive line. You shouldn't just look at it as we're only going to take a cornerback at 21. You should take the best guy at the position, in all fairness.
Absolutely. Great points. And that's something that I think Bill Belichick has always done here in New England. Whether fans want to admit it or whether they don't, Bill is always going to go for the top player that he feels can be the biggest asset to his team. Does it hit? Yeah, there are a lot of times where it does. He'll go and he'll make these moves in the first round. Not too long ago, Dante Hightower, Chandler Jones coming back in the first round in these drafts, and they were both home runs as far as I'm concerned, even though Chandler didn't, evolve into the superstar that he is now in the league. He was a very good pass rusher here for a number of years and deserves a lot of credit for the work that he did. Hightower, you don't win Super Bowl 51 without Dante Hightower. I stand by that, and I always will. He's been a cornerstone of this defense. But for every pick that you have a first rounder like Dominique Easley that just did not work out here in New England for a lot of reasons, most of which had to do with injury. But when you look
and you have a Nikhil Harry. Sorry.
I know. It is. It's tough.
It's relatable though. It is. I know.
It is very relatable.
What fans relate to. It's the first round pick that a lot of fans think, excuse my language, is a bit of a crapshoot. So it is what it is, kind of thing.
True.
So.
You're absolutely right. And that's exactly why it really is important to go for player value as opposed to always just going for position of need. And the Patriots have several positions of need right now where they need dynamic talent. It's a
Yes.
deep draft. We've said this all week
Mhm.
long. I've said it all month long, really, here on Locked On Patriots. This is a
All
very
year
deep
long.
draft. It is. It's a deep draft for what the Patriots need. You want
Mm.
offensive line talent. There's a lot of great prospects.
Yeah.
You mentioned Ryman. You mentioned, guys like a Trevor Penning. Kenyon Green, I think, would be an excellent fit here from Texas A&M as a guard. Zion Johnson is probably my favorite out of all of those guys. Is he
Oh,
necessarily the biggest name on the board when it comes to these talents? No, but I think Zion has the opportunity to really come in here, especially his skill set and what he can bring to the Patriots and thrive in this system. So you go with him in the first round. I don't think you make a bad move. Cornerback, obviously, everybody does want the shiny new toy. The problem is these cornerbacks are rising in the ranks, and
yeah.
it's not a
Very much.
guarantee that an Andrew Booth, it's not a guarantee that a Trent McDuffie, obviously Sauce Gardner, Derek Stingley, those guys are going to be off the board by 21. No one questions that. But
Can you
someone
imagine
like
if they're not, though? Sorry.
if
Can
they're
you
not,
imagine if one of those
if
guys
there
is
is a
sitting there at
slip,
21?
exactly. If there is a slip,
Crazy.
just like Jamison Williams at the wide receiver position,
Yeah.
even though you may have added pieces in the offseason that may not necessitate you using a first round pick on this position,
Mhm.
dynamic talent like that comes along once in a lifetime, and you do not let that type of talent sit there on the board for no apparent reason. And then there are times where the Patriots go against the grain as well. And Dax Hill was a player whose name came up yesterday, heavily criticized by some of the listeners. And I get it. I understand where they're coming from. He does have some prowess playing a little bit of outside corner, and it does project as a free safety at this level. But
Mhm.
you can make the argument that the Patriots don't need that. I completely understand that. I think it's a valid argument. But at the same time, the Patriots value these Swiss Army type players that just have an ability to fit in. Troy Anderson was the guy that I wrote about. He was the guy that you wrote about
Oh, yeah.
earlier this week
Yeah.
as a defensive Swiss Army knife player that can really play a number of roles. So the Patriots are going to dance to the beat of their own drum. They're going to go in the direction that they feel is best for the football team. And ultimately, I mean, that's why it is a guessing game. That's why they make the decisions. We make the prognostications.
Yes.
They make the decisions in one Patriots place. And with the trophies that are sitting in that case, it's kind of hard to argue with their logic. Despite of what you'll hear on terrestrial radio, Patriots usually do a pretty good job with this more often than not. So, Claire, we're going to be glued to the sets tomorrow night here in New England, all over. With you, it's going to be a late night. I know you're going to be hanging in there with us. So rest up. But all kidding aside, folks, there's 5. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you joining me today. You always add that class pizzazz, and you always add wisdom and counsel to our Wednesdays here. And that's why we always love having you. And we will continue to have you each and every Wednesday here on Locked On Patriots. Before I let you go, please let everyone know where they can find you, all of your great work, and what we can look forward to in terms of draft coverage and beyond from the great pen and the great voice of ClazzyClare Cooper.
Well, thank you very much for having me again, Mike. And thank you, everybody, for listening. As Mike did mention, I've put out a few pieces, recent draft articles for Pat's Propaganda. So there were 8 of those over the weekend. So Friday to Sunday, they were actually stepped out. So you can now kind of go back and check out all 8 before you hit the draft and kind of grab a cup of coffee, sit back, relax, read a few bits and pieces about cornerbacks and linebackers and edge rushers and things like that. Yeah, do a Mike, sit back, relax, and have a bit of a read. But I mean, if you don't fancy reading, that's fine. A Clare perspective, the mailbag episode went out the end of last week as well, and that's very much draft. It was very much draft orientated. A lot of questions did come in about the draft and things like that. So if you fancy a bit more draftiness, then catch that episode 30 of A Clare Perspective, brought to you by Full Press Coverage. That is out now most places that you download your podcast for free. Also, don't forget, every single week we are there for you on E2G Sports at One Patriots Place. Myself, Steve Balistreri, and Thomas Murphy. So we recorded on Tuesday, so that's out on kind of like YouTube and all the places that you get your podcast with the lovely Ryan Spagnoli. So we had him on yesterday as well. He was hardworking yesterday, very hardworking chap, very great
Absolutely.
chap. That was
Hardest
very
working man in the biz.
He was definitely one of. So
Yep.
if you want to go and check out, but we are here for you each and every week, as I said, on E2G Sports. So we'll be back next Tuesday, and keep an eye out. There will be an after the draft A Clare perspective. So don't worry, there will be some just after the draft coverage. So yeah, make sure you keep your ears and eyes peeled for A Clare Perspective, the podcast, episode 31.
How could you refuse that request, folks? I don't know how you do it. And yes, Spags was a guest on One Patriots Place yesterday. For all of you wrestling fans, Spags was like the equivalent of Rick Rude yesterday. He showed up on Raw and Nitro on the same day. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's dedication. No, Ryan is a great friend, great analyst, and we were thrilled to have him here on Locked On Patriots, as I know you were on One Patriots Place. But all kidding aside, folks, definitely go ahead and check out all of the great work that Claire has done. Her draft coverage for Pat's Propaganda is second to none. I highly encourage you to take a look at it, especially over the course of the next 24 to 48 hours. Some interesting insight, things you'll find only on Pat's Propaganda and only from the great pen of my good friend, the Empress of Tight Endage herself, ClazzyClare Cooper. Claire, what can I say? It's a blast. It has been a lot of fun covering the draft with you this year. We look forward to continuing to cover the Patriots roster building, their off-season workout program as they march toward the 2022 season. So we'll continue to do that each and every Wednesday here on Locked On Patriots. In the meantime, we continue to bring you draft coverage here on the Locked On Patriots podcast and really all over the Locked On Podcast Network. This is definitely one of our favorite times of year, and we always thank you for making Locked On Patriots your first listen every day. But folks, as we've alluded to all show long, the NFL draft is here. We know fans are dying to know who their team is going to take. Locked On and Odyssey present the ultimate mock draft. It's the biggest mock draft on the planet, featuring 70 Locked On local experts, my esteemed colleagues, and also NFL insiders, including Michael Irvin, Jason LaConfora. Over 6 episodes, they'll provide you with their thoughts on our selections for our upcoming teams. The NFL mock draft, free and available now on the Locked On NFL podcast, on Odyssey, wherever you get your podcasts. Definitely make sure to stay locked into the Locked On Podcast Network. And of course, as a personal favor, stay locked into the Locked On Patriots podcast. Until tomorrow, Foxborough faithful, on behalf of my esteemed friend and co-host, ClazzyClare Cooper, I'm Mike Debate. Stay safe, stay well. Have a great day, everyone, and we look forward to talking more draft with you here tomorrow on Draft Day on Locked On Patriots.